Hello, and welcome to Grizzly's video, How to Use Planer Pals. This is one in a series of how-to videos we are producing, making it easier for our customers to upgrade and maintain their Grizzly equipment. My name is Kent, and this is Shaun, an engineer here at Grizzly.
Hi.
Together we'll show you step by step how to properly install blades on your planer using Planer Pals. We are using the Grizzly G0453 planer today, but the procedure is essentially the same for the majority of planers out there. This video is designed to give you an overview of the usage of these jigs and to help you visualize the process. It should be used in conjunction with the instructions that came with your specific machine. We recommend that you watch this entire video and read these instructions thoroughly before using these jigs. You can also call our technical support at 570-546-9663 if you need further assistance. But most important, follow all shop safety procedures. And remember, there are no more important safety devices than these. Standard planer pals are adjustable and fit straight knife cutter heads from 2 1/2 inches to 4 inches in diameter. Always start by unplugging the machine from power source. Remove the dust hood and chip chute. Be extremely careful. Even though these blades are dull for cutting wood, they can easily cut your fingers or knuckles if you're not careful. Wear protective leather gloves when directly handling the knives. On a 15-inch planer, the chip breaker is usually in the way and needs to be partially removed for the jigs to fit on the cutter head properly. This is usually not necessary on 20-inch or larger planers. You'll need to remove the locking rod by sliding it out the other side. This will allow the chip breaker to slide back enough for the jigs to fit onto the cutter head. Remove the chip deflector if needed. For accuracy in setting the knives, you will need a clean, dust-free surface for the jigs to rest on. Once you have access to the cutter head area, use a shop vacuum and take a couple of minutes to clean the sawdust and chips out. Then take a shop rag and very carefully wipe the cutter head and knife to remove all residual dust. I cannot emphasize enough just how easy it is to cut yourself. Be careful. Don't loosen or remove the dull knives yet. First, we need to set the jigs to the current knife height so the new knives are set at the same height. If you don't do this, you'll also have to readjust the feed and pressure rollers and the pressure bar height, as these items are all set relative to the knives. Take one of your Planer Pal jigs and loosen the set screws that allow the middle bar to slide up and down. Then place it over the center of the cutter head, directly over one of the knives. Make sure the middle bar contacts the knife edge and that the end bars contact the cutter head securely. Once the jig is properly positioned, carefully tighten the set screws to lock the middle bar in place. Now remove the first jig and set the second jig the same way. Make sure that you place it in the exact same spot where you adjusted the first. This will result in both jigs being set exactly the same. Otherwise, your knife heights could vary slightly from one end to the other. Once the second jig is adjusted, set them both aside. You're now ready to replace or reset your knives. You'll achieve the best results by removing and replacing knives one at a time, leaving the rest tightened in place. Loosen each gib bolt and then carefully lift the blade and gib out of the slot. Again, be extremely careful so you don't cut yourself. Wear protective leather gloves for the direct handling of the knives. If your planer has springs under the knives, pull them out and set them aside. A small screwdriver or magnet can help if the springs are down in the hole. Before installing a new blade, use a small brush and rag to clean all the debris out of the cutter head slots. Now we're ready to install the blades. Put the springs back in the cutter head and then place a gib in the cutter head slot. Being very careful, place the new blade in the slot with the beveled surface facing toward the cutter head and away from the gib. Now set the planer pals over the top of the knife so the outside magnets span the width of the slot and the center magnet is pushing on the top of the knife edge. Be sure they are seated squarely on the cutter head and don't rock or accuracy will be compromised. Begin tightening the gib bolts, starting in the center and then move out in both directions, lightly snugging each bolt a little at a time. Once you have several of the bolts partially tightened so that the knives won't move, remove the planer pal jigs and tighten any gib bolts that might have been inaccessible due to jig placement. After all the gib bolts have been snugged, go back and final tighten them. Again, starting in the middle and then alternating back and forth until you reach the ends of the cutter head. Once the first knife is set, repeat these steps on the remaining knives. If your knives get nicked but are otherwise sharp, it's not always necessary to replace them. You can often reset the knives by slightly offsetting them from side to side so the nicks no longer align with each other. To do this, loosen the knives one at a time and then set the jigs in place. Carefully slide the knife slightly to the left or right and then retighten. Proceed to the next knife and offset to the opposite direction as the first. This way, the next knife will remove the ridge left by the nick in the previous knife. This method is an ideal way to deal with small nicks, but knives with larger nicks will need to be removed from the machine and resharpened by a qualified knife sharpener or replaced. However, be sure to prepare your jigs before you remove the knives so that you may easily reset them to the exact height when you replace them. When you have finished replacing or adjusting your knives, reinstall the chip deflector and dust hood, and you're done. Now let's make some sawdust.